Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. Today's session is going to be how to conduct research for an open memo assignment dealing with assault of a federal officer using the jurisdiction of the Eighth Circuit. So I've logged into Westlaw Precision from lawschool.tr.com, and I wanted to go ahead and get started with a couple of organizational tools, and then we'll get started with our research. For the first thing I want us to do is I'm going to click on folders at the top of the screen and click view all. And this is where you'll see I have a bunch of folders created for various projects. So I'm going to create a folder for this session. And I will call it Assault of a Federal Officer, Eighth Circuit. I'm going to copy that because I'm going to use it again. And I will click OK. And I am now going to click on the top right next to folders where it says My Links and click where it says View All Favorites. So remember, folders save pieces of paper. Favorites saves places on Westlaw. And I will click Add a Group, click Paste. I know I can't use that dash, and I will click Save. So I now have a folder and a favorite. So throughout the class, I'm going to drop documents into my folders, and throughout the class, I'm going to drop places into my favorites. And at the end, I'm going to show you how I can use both of them in the future. All right, I'm going to go back to the home page. And the first place that I want to take us to is just right here, simply on the main login screen. And I want us to do a global search right here on the home page. And I will do assault, federal officer, basic search. I know I have some additional facts that I can throw in. I'll use those later. Over on the right side of the screen, I'm going to untag all states and all federal, and I will simply tag Eighth Circuit. So this will run a search in primary law for the Eighth Circuit, as well as all the rest of Westlaw. So you're narrowing it down by the Eighth Circuit, but it's still a pretty big search. And this is a good way to start if you're not really sure exactly what you're doing yet, and you just kind of want to see what's out there. You can see all of the different content over on the left side. I can see over 2,400 cases, over 10,000 secondary sources, quite a few, some statutes and court rules, and a bunch of other content that you likely don't need. You can see where your search terms appear highlighted in yellow and in bold throughout the text of the documents. So you can get a little bit of an idea if your search worked well. Did you get results that you think would be helpful? I could go to a different content type to see the results. And again, they look like they're helpful here. You know, who is a federal officer, the essentials, elements of the offense charged, you know, assaulting, resisting, or impeding a federal officer. And so, again, my search looked like it worked, you know, at least all right initially. And so I feel like this is always a good place to begin, but not always the best place to end your research. And that's what I also want to leave you with today, and leave you confident that you are ensuring that you have everything you need from the places on Westlaw that you want, and also teaching you about the different content that you do have access to. Whereas if you're just always running a search from the homepage, you know you're running your search at Eighth Circuit primary, but you are, again, running your search in quite a bit of material. So I'm going to click back on Westlaw Precision. And the first place I want us to go into are content types. And I'm going to click into secondary sources. Now, I'm starting with a secondary source just simply because maybe I don't know a lot about this subject, and so I just want to see what's out there, try to get some expertise, someone who knows a lot about this and maybe has written a couple of articles. So a couple of the places that I wanted to highlight. First, the American Law Reports, which is a great secondary source. It's probably one of your big national secondary sources that you can always use. On your screen, it would likely say add to favorite. So I'm going to click where mine says edit. I'm going to add it to this one, the assault of a federal officer, so I can come back to this. Now I can run my search in just ALR as opposed to all secondary sources on Westlaw. So you likely don't need all secondary sources. I did get quite a few again, just 10,000 here, but I could add something to my search over on the left side with the search within results. So maybe I do want to add something, intimidation, and see if any of these documents also reference the word intimidation, which is another one of maybe the factors that you might have to be looking at: the resistance, the intimidation, the kind of just staring down of the officer. And here I can now see it drop my list from over 10,000 now down to about 1,100 that also have this new term in it. Now, I could have included the word intimidation at the top and included it as part of my original result. But what I like about doing it this way is I can see my original search terms in yellow, and then my new search term appear highlighted in purple. And so why I like that as a researcher, I can quickly gauge to see if it's a really important part of the article, if there's a big discussion. I can also look at the titles of the articles to see specifically what the article is going to cover. And so here we have what constitutes offense of obstructing or resisting an officer. It may be done by threats, intimidation, or resisting in some way that obstructs the officer. And so I can easily see now where intimidation specifically appears. Had I included intimidation at the beginning in my original search, everything would have appeared in yellow, and I couldn't really notice that delineation between my original search and the adding of the word intimidation. I'm going to add a couple of these to my folder. So I've already saved ALR, the database, to my favorites, and now I'm going to drop a few of these articles into my folder. So one of the reasons that I love ALR articles is that they are nicely organized. They usually have a nice outline, an index of facts and terms, and they also have the cases that are cited within the document broken down by jurisdiction. I can see that this article is 94 pages, so it's not too bad, 100 pages of reading, but if I look here, I can see what this article is going to talk about. And then it's also going to show me specifically an outline, as well as other specific facts, issues, people, anything else that it specifically references. And then following that, a table of cases, potentially laws and rules as well, statutes that might be referenced in the article. And here I can see that there are about a dozen or so from the Eighth Circuit. So this is maybe a list of cases that I want to get started with. What I also really like about secondary sources is that it's a great primer in seeing what others have relied upon and have cited to. And so this would also give you the confidence in knowing that if you do a case law search on your own in the future, you can think to yourself, oh, well, I saw that case also cited in these couple of articles, so I might be on the right path here. So that's another reason that I personally like secondary source and starting that way, because I can start seeing where the cases that authors and other people are relying upon when they're talking about these particular issues. I'm going to go back to the ALR reports and then back to secondary sources. A couple of other databases that you can try are your various jurisprudence and encyclopedias, things like the American Jurisprudence, Corpus Juris Secundum. These are all listed here. You also have your state jurisprudence databases. If you were researching something state, those would also be helpful for you to look into. I'm going to tag AmJur and add it to my favorites. I'm not going to just simply rerun that search again. I could go into the assault and battery volume by chance if I wanted to do that and see everything for that particular volume. And I could also specifically add just that volume of AmJur and not all of AmJur. So you can get even more specific. And that's something else that I also like is choosing the path of least research resistance versus that global search from the homepage. I know I'm researching assault, and so why would I want to search in energy materials or family law materials? I know I'm researching a particular issue and a particular practice area. So again, I could go into criminal liability and start opening it, or now run my search up here at the top. And again, because I am only searching in just AmJur and then in a specific volume of AmJur, my search can be really simple because my universe of potential results has really been diminished. I'm not searching in, several thousand databases. I'm just searching in one. All right, I'm going to go back to secondary sources. So as I mentioned, if you were researching a state issue, you could access your state jurisdiction secondary sources. Those are always a good place to begin as well. We are researching federal, so I'm going to skip over those right now. You could also research by topic or practice area. That is also a good place to go to get materials written by experts in those fields. So I would click on criminal law just to see everything categorized in secondary sources as a criminal law secondary source. And with anything, when you're learning how to use Westlaw and trying to just learn about the content and resources that you have, do take a little bit of time. I can see that there are 376 secondary sources that are categorized as criminal law resources. So it might take me a little bit of time to go through all of this information. There's AmJur again. I'm going to go ahead and just for the purposes of this class, click on the letter W. And I've maybe heard of this great secondary source called Wharton's on Criminal Law. And so if you know of a database, I could type it at the top, Wharton's Criminal Law, or now that I'm here in secondary sources, I could keep looking through it alphabetically. And here is Wharton's on Criminal Law. I can add that to my favorites. And again, I could start opening it up right here in front of me, offenses against the person by chance. Here we have a whole chapter on assault and battery and a whole subsection specifically on assault. And I can see all of the sections on assault in Wharton's on criminal law. I could also run my search. Maybe now I just want to see if there's anything specifically about assault and a federal officer and run my search. Again, I'm now in one specific database. I could add something now. Here we have aggravated assault or battery against police officers. And add my secondary search again. Try to take that list from 283 or so. And now here we have, it's now dropped down to 16. And so we have words and gestures, the act, acts for attempts in general, carjacking, and so on. So you can look through the titles of these articles to see if any of them might be helpful to your research that you are wanting to see and try to find resources for. I'm going to clear that, and I'm going to add a couple of these into my folder. Again, I am adding these just simply for the purposes of this recording. I have not read your full assignment, so there might be other details that you would want to narrow this by. I am just doing this for at the end to show you a couple of things in your folders and in your favorites. All right, I'm going to go back out to the home page and click back on content types and click on statutes and court rules. Now, the next place that you can begin is by looking for a statute if you know that one exists. I started this class initially with secondary sources just as an example, but if you know that there's a statute out there, this is also an excellent place to begin because of everything that we've already attached to our statutes. So this is where you can find all of your statutes, your US Code, the Constitution, all of your federal rules, all of your state statutes, as well as some statutes organized topically as well. I'm going to go ahead and click into the US Code annotated. There are a couple of things that you could do here. I could run my search at the top. I could also scroll through the titles here. I can see Title 18 is all about crimes and criminal procedure. So I could open up that title and research specifically in this section of the US Code. Again, choosing the path of least research resistance. I'm going to add that to my favorites. I could look through all of the subchapters and, again, now this might be a little bit overwhelming. I might want to now run my search here in just this one title of the US Code instead of all of the US Code. And now I'm going to run my assault of a federal officer in just Title 18 of the US Code. And so I did retrieve quite a few, 926, but I feel good that I'm in the US Code annotated as well as in the crimes and criminal procedure title. And right off the bat, I can see we have assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers or employees, protection of officers and employees of the United States. I can tag both of these and drop those into my folder. And I want to hop into one of them just to show you what you can do with a statute once you have found it. So again, if you know that there's a statute out there, stop and try to find it because we have a lot of really good material already attached to our statutes. Another thing that I did want to talk about is anytime you are searching in statutes, be it the US Code annotated or any of the state statutes, keep your search simple because statutes oftentimes do not look like cases and they don't look like secondary sources. And you can see here we have letters, numbers, you might have uppercase, lowercase, Roman numerals. Is this a sentence, whoever, and this kind of goes on here. So is this whole thing a sentence? So your terms and connectors a lot of times don't work well in statutes database, and keeping it simple will oftentimes make you really successful. And so here I have my section, and there are 2 clicks that you can make on this document to help you find additional information. The first are on your notes of decisions, which are also called annotations. And these are written by the West editors who have essentially read cases. And when they find a case that really talks about or interprets or explains a statute, they will add it to the notes of decisions of that statute. But most importantly, they will tell you how they've discussed it. So over on the left side, there are 2 big categories, generally, and the other one is procedure. I can open up each of those to see how they have discussed it. Elements of offense, officers and employees of the United States, persons assisting the federal officer, forcible acts, threats and intimidation. And again, one of the other reasons that I want to teach you about different content, I first showed you secondary sources. We saw some list of cases. I also want you to start noticing the lists and the names of cases as well in your statutes. And so here I can see US v. Janus, US v. Roy, Yates, Young, Schrader. And you might start again noticing those names appearing over and over in other content. So we saw them in secondary sources. I'm now seeing them in statutes. So again, that might, be a notice for you that, I've now seen Roy twice. I've now seen Schrader a couple of times. So those might be documents that I would want to take a look at. You'll also notice these topic and key numbers here in the notes of decisions. I'll talk about those when we get to cases. And so you can go to each category to try to find cases that are specifically referencing this statute for this particular reason. So US v. Walker in, the Second Circuit from New York is also talking about threats and intimidation from the DC Circuit. This one from the Western District of Pennsylvania. So one of the things that I also wanted to stress to you, you might be looking at the notes of decisions for threats and intimidation and think, well, Anna, I can't use these. I'm researching the Eighth Circuit and these are from DC. This is from the Second Circuit or Colorado, Pennsylvania. I want you to remember that and think, Anna's going to show me something of how I can use this case, even if it's not in my jurisdiction. So I'm going to come back to that. So remember these topic and key numbers, and remember there's always a way you can use a case, even if it's not in your jurisdiction. The next click that I want you to do is on key cite citing references. Key cite citing references will be everything that has cited to this section that you are looking at. This can be cases, court documents, other statutes and regulations, administrative decisions, secondary materials that have cited to this section in the US Code. So I could click on cases, and now I can try to find any case that has cited to 18 USCA section 111. Click on cases and then on filters, click on the plus next to jurisdiction, go into federal and then the courts of appeals, and then tag the Eighth Circuit. And it dropped my list from 3,400 plus down to 129. So with just a couple of clicks in key cite citing references, I now have a bunch of cases, hopefully at least a few dozen, that will help me expand my research. I could tag a few just to get started and save those into my folder. I could add an additional search term over on the left, just like I have before in ALR or in my search that I was doing. I could add intimidation, immigration, car stop, whatever it might have been, the action that, the client was doing. So again, you could add anything else you wanted to maybe narrow those even 129 deeper that might discuss your particular issue. So that's one way that you can also start a research project, is going out and finding the statute that is related to your research, then using the notes of decisions, the cases that are cited, as well as key cite citing references. The other option in key cite citing references that's really helpful are the secondary sources that have cited to this section. Maybe you don't know a lot about assaulting, resisting, or impeding officers or employees. And so looking at secondary sources again might be a good place to begin. So this might be a place for you to take a look at and see if these might be helpful. All right, I'm going to go back out to Westlaw Precision. And I did want to show you a couple of other tabs here just to highlight them. The first are federal materials. So this is where you can find your US code, the Code of Federal Regulations, all of your circuit material. So I could click on 8th Circuit here and see everything for the 8th Circuit. Again, all of your 8th Circuit federal cases, all of your district court cases, case law databases, the US code, the CFR, other secondary sources that might be specific and helpful, briefs, jury, court documents, and things like that. I could also click on state materials. I did want to highlight this. If you did have a state project, this is where you could find everything for a particular jurisdiction. So this is really helpful for you to browse through. If you plan on going to Texas for the summer, or Florida or New York, or if you're going to stay in Louisiana, these might be really good places for you to take a look at. Again, Louisiana statutes and court rules. You can find your Louisiana Civil Code here, the Louisiana Code of Civil and Criminal Procedure, the rules of court, all your secondary sources, the Louisiana Practice and Civil Law Treatise, two of your best friends here in the state of Louisiana. So again, this class is really intended not just necessarily to help you with your memo assignment, but to also really expand your breadth of knowledge about what you have access to. And then the final option is the content organized by practice area. So you could also start here. Maybe you just want some criminal law information, cases, statutes, specific on secondary sources, briefs, court documents, and so on. So again, any of these avenues are a good place to begin. I'm going to click back on Westlaw Precision and go back to content types and click into cases. And then for this class, I want us to click into federal cases by circuit, 8th Circuit, and I will add this to my favorites. So now I'm just in 8th Circuit federal cases. I could just go into the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. I could go into a specific district court, just the Supreme Court if I wanted to. But let's say I just want to search in everything. I'm going to use my same search. It has worked well and has seemed to get me results. Again, I'm not typing in too much information to lead you down any specific path. You need to read your assignment and add any additional search terms, but I could add some additional search terms here if I wanted to. I can see that Westlaw has a drop down of suggested searches. I could use that if I wanted to, if that was important to my research. But I'm going to go ahead and just stick to my basic search and see what I get. Again, I am in just one case law database, so my search can be relatively broad. I still have here 2,471 results. I can see that question, and then I can see my results here over on the right side with my search terms highlighted in yellow and in bold. And then I can scroll through to see the browse boxes here, the snippets of information, and add anything else. And here we have my US v. Roy case, US v. Oki, there's Schrader. I could add some additional search terms. Again, I obviously do not have time to read through 2,471 cases. So this is a good time to maybe add in a particular prong or element that you're trying to discuss and try to find cases specific to those particular sub-issues, sub-elements, sub-prongs of a test. I'm going to add a few of these into my folder. And for the purposes of class, I'm going to hop into US v. Schrader. Let that save. All right, so what can we do here with a case on Westlaw? So there are a few clicks that I could do here. I do want to talk a little bit about our cases. We've talked about this in the intro class. We have the synopsis, which is a quick summary of the case, including some of the facts, the procedural history, and the holding. You also have the West headnotes, which are, again, all of the legal issues that were argued and discussed in the case in order in which they appear in the opinion. So this is essentially an outline of the case, letting me know what has happened. And so I can see that headnote number 3 is talking about obstructing justice while force is a necessary element. It's also referencing my statute here that I looked at earlier. I can click on that headnote number and it would take me to that portion of the opinion where it is discussed. I could take some notes and highlight this and maybe make a note that this is all about the force issue. Here we have the forcibly instruction. So this might lead me into that particular discussion. I could also highlight this without taking notes and just highlight it. Again, this is your password. You can do whatever you want, however you want to stay organized. I'm going to hop back up to the head notes. And so remember when we were in the statute, we were in 18 USCA 111, and I noted the cases, and if they weren't in your jurisdiction, we saw some from the Second Circuit, Pennsylvania, Colorado, DC. And so I was saying that there's always a way that you can use a case. If you look at it and you're like, this is really good. The one first way is right here in your head notes. And so let's say I like this head note number 4 about assault and battery, criminal law, and obstructing justice. And if I look over to the right side, I can see the topic and key numbers that I also saw in the notes of decisions that this references. So the West editors are categorizing and breaking down the cases for us. If I click on this topic and key number, it's first going to run the search in the jurisdiction of the case that I'm in, so the 8th Circuit. But let's say I wanted to see cases from the 5th Circuit. I don't know if there are any, but I could click on 5th Circuit, and now it's going to run that same topic and key number dealing with assault and battery offenses against public officers and employees in the 5th Circuit. And now here are some cases that have that same issue discussed. I could change it and go back to my 8th Circuit, or I could do it in Kentucky or Vermont or the 1st Circuit or the Supreme Court. And that's the power of the topic and key number system. It's letting me utilize that index system of the cases to help me find other similar cases. It is an amazing tool for you to find other cases. You'll see the topic and key numbers in your cases attached to your head notes in the notes of decisions of statutes. And a lot of times you will also see them at the top of secondary sources if there is any that the author has referenced. I'm going to use my history to go back to Schrader. The other things that you can do here from your case is the first is click on Table of Authorities. The Table of Authorities is a list of cases that was cited by the Schrader Court. I can see that there are 22 cases that were cited by the US v. Schrader Court. I can see on what page this case was cited on, if it was quoted directly, and how much Schrader discussed it in its opinion. So if you like Schrader, these might be some cases to take a look at and go over and see why the Schrader Court relied upon them. So there's a lot that you can do if you just have one document, be it a secondary source, be it a statute, or be it a case. The next click that you can also do is just over from the Table of Authorities, and it is Key Cite Citing References. Key Cite Citing References is a list of documents that have since cited to US v. Schrader. So this will be cases, court documents, secondary sources, and administrative decisions. So I can easily see all of the cases that have cited to this case. I can also see what headnotes they have in common. So US v. Wilkins has cited to US v. Schrader, and they also have headnote number 4. That was the headnote that I liked. So I might want to go and check US v. Wilkins out to see if it might be helpful. They have also quoted this document, has quoted Schrader. So I would definitely want to take a look at it. It's also discussed it for almost a page, at least a paragraph or more. 4 bars, at least a page or more of discussion. 3 bars, a few paragraphs, less than a page. 2 bars, a few sentences, less than a paragraph. And 1 bar would be a brief mention in passing. The other click that you can do here is on key site cited with. So table of authorities are the cases that came before Schrader. Key site citing references are cases that have been decided since that have cited to Schrader. Key site cited with is kind of something that I call case cousins. So these are documents that have often been cited with Schrader in other documents. So US v. Walker has been cited with Schrader by 12 other cases, but Walker didn't cite to Schrader, Schrader didn't cite to Walker, and vice versa. So I can now see these cases where these 2 cases have both cited to Schrader and Walker, and I might want to see why. And maybe these are some good cases to take a look at as well. So we kind of put everything out there, cases that your case cited to, cases that have cited to your case, and cases that have been often cited with your case. So again, lots of avenues for you to start. Now you'll also notice that Schrader has a little yellow flag in the top left corner. That is one of our key site references. You can see the legend right here at the top of any document that key site is available for. So this is telling me something about the case that I'm looking at. As in US v. Schrader, there's a yellow flag. So that indicates that there's negative treatment, but nothing that is case killing. So some cases didn't follow my case, but didn't directly impact it. A red flag indicates that my case has negative treatment in its direct line that has directly impacted my case, and I would need to click on the history tab to see what happened. A red stripe flag indicates that my case is no longer good law for at least one identified point of law by a case outside the direct history of my case. So another case had a direct impact on mine. A blue stripe flag indicates that my case has been appealed to the US Courts of Appeals or to the Supreme Court. And then the orange exclamation point circle indicates that something my case relied upon in the table of authorities may no longer be valid. So I would need to follow up to see what has happened and does that impact how I am using my case. So in this case, there's a yellow flag. I can easily see the negative treatment cases right here at the top to see how these have differentiated Schrader. They've distinguished it. Maybe they declined to extend the holding in some way, so I could take a look. If there was a red flag or the blue stripe flag, I would want to click on the history tab. And if there was the orange circle, I would want to click on negative treatment to see what case impacted my case from the table of authorities. So again, just lots of different options for you to be able to expand, see what's happening, see what's happened with your case to develop your analysis even deeper. All right, let's wrap up this session. So you saw just a second ago that I clicked on the history at the top of the screen to go back to Schrader. Our history stays on our passwords for 1 full year, so I can go back to any key sites, key numbers, searches I've run, documents I've opened. I can even search within this. Maybe I saw a case about an immigration officer that I want to go back and find and type the word immigration or something in the state of California, perhaps, and look through my documents that way. I'm going to click into my folder that I created, my Assault of a Federal Officer in the 8th Circuit folder that I've been dropping documents in. So here is my folder with everything that I've dropped into my folder. So you can see everything here. I can also search within my folder. But you'll also notice that a pop-up appears with new recommendations based on what I've already dropped in my folder. It's also why I have so many different folders. I want my folders to work for me. So maybe I don't want my Utah common law marriage information in with my 8th Circuit federal officer assault information. So here I can see that there are 53 recommendations, and they've even broken them down about why they are recommending them. I did want to stress to you that Westlaw is not saying that these are better or the best documents. Westlaw is just recommending these based on what you already have in your folder. And we're just essentially saying, hey, you might want to take a look at these too. You might have already seen them. You may have already decided you don't want to look at them. And so I can also see that there might be some statutes here that might be helpful, as well as some other secondary sources that might be useful as well. So again, based on what you have in your folder, we are making recommendations of things that are not currently in your folder. And then the final place that I want to go back to is the view all favorites. And you can see here that I have my 8th Circuit cases, my Title 18 from the US Code, the Wharton's criminal law, we have the assault and battery from AMJUR, and the American Law Reports. So remember from the home page when I ran my search and it brought up jury verdicts and forms and briefs and all kinds of information. Now I can just type in my search and search in the places where I think or know my answer will appear. I can also now get a little bit more specific because I'm now really, in the databases where I think my answer will be. And I can add something else to my search because I know a little bit more about what I'm doing. And it still did give me a lot from the American Law Reports. I should probably, obviously maybe add something else, but here I now have my 8th Circuit federal cases in the US Code, Wharton's assault and battery from AMJUR, and now I can look at these to see if they are more specific on my particular topic that I'm doing. So those were the things that I wanted to show you and highlight to you today. I did want to remind you that you're always welcome to email me at any time. My email's right here on the top of the screen, just for your reference. You can also find me on the main law school homepage underneath your name where it says contact us. My picture and my link to my email will appear there. But again, don't hesitate to email me if you have Westlaw related questions. I can't do your research specifically for you, but I can remind you, how did you find something, or what does that flag mean? Or, is my search too crazy? I keep getting 10,000 results every single time I research, and, maybe I need to make this a little bit better. Again, just don't hesitate to ask, because asking one question might save you a ton of time in the future. So that's it. Best of luck on your open memo assignment. And I hope it turns out well, and I will talk to you in the future. Thank you so much.